I was nursing my final beer of the night when Lori walked up to the table and sat down at an empty chair next to mine. Sorry it took so long to talk to you. It's been a crazy night. You've been pretty busy, I answered. Comes with the bridesmaid territory, no? She nodded and asked, I was surprised when I saw you at the reception line at the wedding. What has it been, 2 years or so? Yes, but it's good to see you again. How do you know the bride? I asked. She's my cousin. We've been friends since we were young. Do you know the bride or groom? I work with the groom. He invited a number of us from work. It's been a pretty good reception. The band has actually been pretty good. Lori nodded again. As if on cue, the band returned from their break and started to play again. Would you like to dance? She asked. It was my turn to nod. Sure, although I don't promise any dance skills. It's little known, but accountants can't dance. She laughed. I don't think lawyers can either, except in court. It was my turn to laugh as we walked onto the dance floor with a number of other wedding guests. We danced a fast number first, and I did my best to pretend how to dance, and then the band shifted to a slow number. You look very nice. Are you still at the same firm? Thanks. My cousin has good taste, so the bridesmaids' dresses aren't as hideous as most. As for the law firm, still there, still working like a dog. The partners like to get their money's worth. You look good too. Looks like you have lost some weight. I had lost about 20 pounds since the last time we had seen each other, and told her the same. A lot of time at the gym, I added. The song ended and we walked back to the table. Lori went to the bar, got a beer, and returned and sat down next to me. Are you dating anyone? Lori asked. I picked up my beer, took a drink, and answered, no. Sorry about you and Marnie. You probably don't want to hear this, but she really traded down after she dumped you. Her new boyfriend's name is Richard, and let's just say he is suitably named. Marnie, my ex-girlfriend of 2 years prior, and Lori were best friends since childhood, BFFs in today's vernacular. When Marnie and I were dating, Marnie and Lori were roommates, which is how I originally met Lori. Lori leaned in closer and went on. Marnie told me the reason she dumped you. I'm not surprised. You two never did have any secrets from each other, did you? But what did she tell you? I asked, while my own internal DVR began replaying the events from 2 years ago like I had a number of times in the last 2 years. She told me you liked to wear women's clothes. Guilty as charged. I've had the urge to cross-dress since I was young. Marnie and I had been dating for 5 months, and were getting more serious. After reading on internet boards about closeted CDs who had been married for years without telling their wives, after a month or so of deliberation, I finally screwed up the courage to tell her. It did not go well. I called and texted her after being dumped, but I didn't get a favorable response. I've been trying to move on since a slow process. I just nodded. That's the reason. She said she couldn't deal with the idea of me dressing as a woman. It wasn't a real long conversation. Obviously, I'd prefer that you not spread that news around. I don't tend to broadcast that a lot. Lori leaned in again and surprised me by saying, well, it didn't end the way you wanted, but you should be proud that you were brave enough to tell her. Women want honesty from men, and sometimes when they get it, they don't like it. Unfortunately, it cost you with Marnie. Like I said, if it's any consolation, she traded down after she dumped you. And your secret is safe with me. Lori then got up to mingle with the other guests and added, "Besides, we all have our secrets." The phone rang. "Finance, this is Dave." "Hi Dave, this is Lori Johnson. Do you have a minute to talk?" "Sure," I answered, wondering why she was calling. "What do you need to discuss?" "I have a favor to ask of you. My firm is celebrating its 50th anniversary and we are having a dinner dance in April to celebrate. I'd like to take a date, but as I'm not dating anyone currently, I thought you might go with me. I'll understand if you say no, but I thought I would ask." I looked at the calendar. "What date is it?" "Saturday, April 19th at 7 p.m., Lori answered. "I'm free that night, and I would be happy to go on a non-date date with you." Post Marnie, I was free a lot of nights. "Thanks, that's great," Lori replied. "One other thing, it's a formal dinner, so you will need to wear a tux." "I'll be happy to pay for the tux." "No, I can pay for the tux, it's no big deal. It will be nice to have a night out as long as you don't hold my dance skills against me." Lori laughed. "You seem to do fine at the wedding. Plus, the beer will be free, so that should loosen up your dance moves." We swapped email addresses, cell numbers, and work numbers. Lori thanked me again, and I told her I was looking forward to the evening. Of course, to be on the safe side, date or non-date a couple of weeks before the event, I texted Lori a picture of the tux I was planning to rent. When she sent back her okay, I figured I was good to go. I drove over to pick Lori up. It was going to be about a 50-minute ride to the country club where the dinner dance was going to be held. As Lori and Marnie were still roommates, I was wondering whether Marnie would be there when I picked Lori up. I wasn't sure whether Marnie knew I was Lori's date for the night either. With some trepidation, I knocked on the door of their townhouse. I'm not sure I was relieved or disappointed when Lori answered the door. Perhaps reading my mind, Lori said, "Marnie's out with Richard tonight. And yes, she knows that you are going with me tonight. I told her a couple of weeks ago. I decided the best course was to ignore the elephant in the room. You look spectacular." Lori had obviously spent time at the hairdresser, getting highlights in her blondish hair, and a sporty cut that looked very chic on her. She was wearing a ruby red one-shoulder dress that suited her athletic build, perched upon matching 3-inch red pumps that accentuated her strong legs. She had taken her looks up a couple of notches from when I had seen her as a bridesmaid. "Thanks. You look pretty spiffy yourself," Lori replied. She grabbed her wrap, put it around her shoulders, grabbed her red clutch purse, and headed out the door with me in the lead. I walked her to my car, held the door for her, and watched as she shimmied into the bucket seat. She said thanks as I closed the door and walked around and climbed into the driver's seat. We chit-chat for the first 10 minutes of the drive. Traffic was light on the highway as it was early on Saturday night and the local baseball team was out of town. Lori then turned toward me and asked, "May I ask a personal question?" "Sure. What's the attraction in dressing like a woman?" "You don't have to answer. I'm just curious." "No, I'm happy to answer. Needless to say, I don't get to talk about it much. Do you want the long version or the short version?" "The long version, we've got a long enough drive." "Okay, I'll start at the beginning. I just remember when I was young, 5 or 6, I was at my aunt and uncle's playing in the basement of their condo. I was by myself and there was a shared basement. There was a rack of clothes on a bar, and there was a girl's dress on a hanger. For some reason, I wanted to try it on. I took it off the hanger and tried to put it on, but it was too small. Then, on Halloween every year, we'd always wear costumes to school. It seemed like every year one of the boys in the school would be dressed as a girl. I was always jealous and wanted to be that boy, even though I would never admit it. When I was in 8th grade, I'm not sure how I convinced my mom, but she had a wig and I went out dressed in my older sister's clothes. It wasn't fancy, just a skirt and a top, and I wore knee socks and my own tennis shoes, but the neighbor next door thought I was my sister. Then when I was older, I was in my sister's room and she had some pantyhose in her clothes hamper. I tried them on and all of a sudden I was ejaculating. It just happened. I had never done that before. I guess my raging hormones got the best of me. So the idea of wearing women's clothes became my kink. Lori asked, "Did you think you were weird?" Of course. I was a debater in high school. Several of my teammates and I would go after school to college libraries to do debate research. Sometimes I would spend an hour or so looking up books on sexuality and the like, and I found out I wasn't the only one like me. That helped. Of course, I buried my thoughts like most cross-dressers. I hinted around with a few girls when I dated, but Marnie was the first one I have ever told. And you know the rest. So is that why you aren't dating? Once burned, twice shy? Lori asked. Bingo. I'm afraid that if I get to the same crossroad, tell or don't tell, I'll get burned again. I'm doing major pain avoidance here. Does it help? She asked. No, not really. I know my impulses aren't going away, so I'm just putting off the inevitable. If I want a girlfriend, and I do, I have to get out into the dating scene. I just can't get past the idea of another train wreck down the road. Do you dress up now? I laughed. No, after Marnie dumped me, I threw away my small accumulation of clothes. It's called purging in the CD community. After getting burned, I figured I would remove the temptation and never do it again. Did that help? For about 3 days. Then I was pissed that I threw away my stuff, although I didn't purge my wig and a pair of my favorite heels. I couldn't bring myself to throw those away, I said, laughing. You have favorite heels? Lori asked incredulously. Sure, doesn't every girl? Mine are black 3-inch pumps. They make my legs look fabulous, I said, exaggerating for effect. Lori laughed. What size do you wear? 11 wide. How do you know your size? Do you go shopping in shoe stores and try them on? Usually women's sizes are a size or two larger than men's shoes. But usually you find out by trial and error. I used to be able to try them on at Payless for larger sizes, and these days you can order them on the internet and have them shipped to you, so they are fairly easy to buy once you know your size. I would have never guessed, said Lori. I always thought you were a vanilla kind of guy, and here you are full of surprises. Or perhaps full of shit, I interjected. Lori laughed. So would you like to wear my dress? Well, I answered. I'm not sure it's my style. I've got male shoulders and I typically like to hide them. But I would kill for a pair of those pumps in my size. We arrived at the dinner dance in a good mood. Lori warned me about a couple of her coworkers, Tom, John, and Dean. They were friendly rivals at the firm and often went to happy hours together. They usually gave Lori trouble about her dating life or lack thereof, and she said they might come after me like piranhas smelling blood in the water. I managed to parry all of their questions, and told them we were just friends. As befitting a big money law firm hosting a shindig at an old money country club, the meal was exquisite. I had a prime rib that covered most of the plate, combined with a baked potato, while Lori devoured her honey-seared salmon and mixed veggies. My red and Lori's white wines were perfect complements to our meal, more so when the table staff left extra bottles on the table so we could refill our glasses. Despite being stuffed from the main meal and slightly buzzed from the wine, we scarfed down our desserts, strawberry cheesecake for me, and creme brulee for Lori. We shared bites of the desserts, and had a friendly disagreement over which was tastier. I could almost feel my tux shrinking with every bite. Our table companions were a mix of a partner, a junior lawyer, an administrative assistant, and their significant others/dates/spouses. Lori managed to hold her own with her coworkers, and I managed not to embarrass myself. We had a lively discussion covering the topics of the day. After dinner, there were a couple of, thankfully short, speeches extolling the firm and the firm's associates. After the speeches, and a personal comfort break, a band took the floor and started playing rock and pop hits from the last couple of decades. For a cover band, they were pretty decent. I had a few dances with Lori, and then sat out a few while she danced with some of her coworkers. I used the time out to admire some of the formal dresses and matching heels, along with the several of the attractive women wearing the dresses, while chit-chatting with some of the other attendees at our table. Gradually, our table mates began to say their goodbyes and leave. The band took a second break and Lori rejoined me at the table. "Sorry for abandoning you," Lori apologized. "I promised a couple of my coworkers dances." "Don't sweat it," I answered. "I'm a big boy and I can take care of myself," I smiled. Lori laughed and said she needed another beer. I asked her to get me one and she wandered off to the bar. When she returned, she handed me my bottle. We clinked glasses, said cheers, and took a slug of our beers. Lori thanked me for coming and said she had a good time. I answered, "This is one of the nicer evenings I've had in a long time. Thank you for asking me to be your non-date." She laughed again. I screwed up my courage and decided to ask what I had been thinking about much of the night. "Can I ask you a personal question?" "Sure," Lori answered. "When Marnie and I were dating, I got the impression that you didn't like me very much. Not that you were rude or anything, but I just got the vibe you didn't like me. And yet tonight you've been as friendly as anyone can be. Did I get the wrong impression when Marnie and I were dating?" Lori was silent for about 10 seconds. I interrupted the silence and told her that she didn't have to answer the question, and that it was just the beer talking. She shook her head and said, "No, it's a fair question." She paused, as if she was measuring her answer in court before a judge. "I'm sorry if I gave you the impression that I didn't like you. I always thought you were a nice guy, and a good match for Marnie. I think I told you before Marnie traded down when she dumped you for Richard. And when Marnie told me her reasons for dumping you, right or wrong, my opinion of you went up," Lori said. "Thanks. But I wasn't imagining that you were cool towards me, was I?" I asked. "No, you were right. Was it something I did?" I asked. "No, it wasn't you, it was me," Lori answered. I was as mystified as before. After a couple of seconds of silence, Lori added, "It wasn't that I didn't like you. I did." And almost as an afterthought, she softly said, "I was jealous of you." "Jealous?" I asked. "Why would you be jealous of me? She's your best friend." I looked her in the eyes and suddenly understood the answer without her saying a word. We both loved the same woman. All I could say was, "Oh." I remembered her words about all of us having secrets. She knew mine, and I knew hers. Does Marnie know your feelings for her? I gently asked. No, I've never told her. I've never told anyone, she said in a near whisper. I started to laugh. Lori responded, What's so funny? We have something in common, I said. We've both been burned by the same woman. She laughed, we clinked our bottles, and finished our beers. We sat eating our concretes at the famous local frozen custard stand as the nightcap for our non-date date. Mine was my favorite, banana/chocolate chip, while Lori had a pistachio. We guzzled our treats and savored the flavors. Finally Lori spoke, Thanks for coming tonight. I had a good time. For what it's worth, I now think that Marnie is even a bigger idiot for dumping you. I just said, thanks, I think. Lori went on. I'd also prefer that you not talk about what I told you earlier. I kind of need to come to grips with the whole idea. I've known I'm gay, I just wasn't ready to admit it to the world. I'm still not ready, but I'm getting there. Your asking about it tonight was a good start, so thanks for that too. You're a good listener. Your secret is safe with me. After all, you know my secret too, so it's kind of form of mutually assured destruction. I won't bomb you if you don't bomb me, I said. Lori laughed. I changed the subject. Marnie told me you were a pretty good tennis player in high school. I've been wanting to learn to play better. Would you be willing to come out and have a hit with me and give me a couple of tips and the like? Lori answered, I haven't played in a long time, so I would be pretty rusty, but that sounds like a fun idea. I'm not sure how good of a coach I am, but I can use the exercise. I'll check my schedule and we can figure out a good day for the both of us. So the following week we exchanged texts about a suitable time and agreed on 7:30 Thursday night at the local park, which had 4 lit courts. It was a beautiful April night and just turning dark when we both arrived at the courts. I had a racket and a can of balls, while Lori arrived with a tennis bag stuffed with rackets. I felt like a duffer compared to her. How many rackets do you have? I asked. 5 or 6, I haven't counted lately, Lori replied. You must have been a pretty serious player back in the day, I added. I played a lot when I was young. Enjoyed it until high school, and then kind of got burned out playing. I haven't played much since college, but it feels good to be back on the courts again. It feels like I belong, Lori said. I opened the can of balls and walked onto the court. We began to bat the balls back and forth. My swings were awkward and forced, while I could see that Lori's, though a bit rusty, were natural and smooth. I watched her closely, her movement, footwork, and swings, trying to learn by osmosis, while still struggling to return the balls. Her grace on the court was quickly evident, while mine was nowhere to be found. After about 15 minutes of hitting, she came to my side of the net and showed me the basics, how to grip the racket, the basic footwork, the swing paths for forehands and two-handed backhands, and positioning for volleys. She gathered the balls and began tossing them to me to practice my swings, focusing on my footwork, tempo, and swing path. After about 15 minutes of tossing me balls, she grabbed her racket and returned to the other side of the net. We began to hit balls again, only this time my swings were smoother, my footwork much better, and I returned balls much easier. With my newfound confidence, we were able to sustain rallies of 10 to 15 balls before I would hit one into the net or off the court. You missed your true calling, I yelled across the net. You should have been a tennis coach. It would be more fun, Lori answered, but it doesn't pay nearly as well as my current gig. Plus, I'm not sure I have the patience to deal with learning players. We agreed to play a set, and she smoked me 6-0. I won a few points, and she took it easy on me, but every ball I returned would come back, and eventually I would make a mistake, or not be able to track down a ball, and lose the point and eventually the game. Lori was a gracious winner and complimented me on being a good student, and that my playing had improved over the course of the 90 minutes we were playing. Thanks for the lesson. I really appreciate it. I now have an idea of what I have to work on the next time I play, I said. To my surprise, Lori asked, would you like to do this on a regular basis? Hitting tonight has brought back my desire to play more often. It would also help me leave some of the office stress behind at least once in a while. I said sure, and we agreed to meet weekly at 7:30 on Thursday night at the park courts. Thursday night tennis became a regular event. The 90 minutes soon became 2 hours. I slowly got better while Lori knocked off all of her rust. We would generally play 3 sets and I would lose all 3, but I got a good workout and I could tell my shots were improving. Most importantly, I was beginning to love playing and Thursday nights were a big part of my week. Lori seemed to be enjoying it as well, even though I wasn't really competitive with her. It also motivated me to hit the aerobic machines at the Y with more enthusiasm and effort, because as I found out, playing singles for 2 hours was tough on the legs and lungs. About a month later, after we were finished, we were talking after playing. Lori quietly said, I want you to know I came out to my parents. They weren't real happy, but my mom suspected that I was gay, and both just want me to be happy. I told Marnie, and she said she knew already, because what else are best friends for? I came out at work last week, and so far, there are no issues. I guess we are living in different times. I thanked her for sharing with me. She then added, thanks for your help. Telling you was somehow cathartic. Someone else knew my secret and the world didn't end. I'm thankful you were there to listen when I needed someone to listen. She then dropped her tennis bag and stepped towards me and gave me a big hug, which I wasn't expecting. I just added that I was glad to be of help, and we made arrangements to play the next Thursday. We played through the summer and fall, missing only a few weeks here and there when we had conflicts, or the courts were too wet to play. We stopped at the end of October, when the weather became too cold to play outside. We agreed once the weather warmed up in the spring we would start our Thursday night sessions again. I joined an indoor tennis club and started playing doubles once a week to get my tennis fix during the winter. I was hooked. Come April we were back at it. Lori was impressed how my game had improved since we played last in October. Besides the doubles league, I took some lessons and played in some clinics and was beginning to better understand the nuances of both singles and doubles. I was turning into a tennis junkie, and had made some tennis friends that I could play with on a regular basis. I hit a milestone in mid-April when I finally beat Lori in a set, and while the competitive side of her was mad at losing, she was gracious in her praise of my play and vowed not to let losing happen again. We were playing the first Thursday in May, and while I had lost, I had been competitive. Usually when we finished we would confirm arrangements for the next Thursday, and then depart. This time, Lori surprised me when she asked if I wanted to go get a beer. I said sure. She then told me the bar's name, The Grove, and added, it's kind of a lesbian bar, if that's going to bother you, but they have a good selection of beers on draft and the food is pretty good if you want something to eat. I said that wasn't a problem, so I loaded the address in my phone and headed off, a bit curious as to why this invite came out of the blue. Lori arrived first at the Grove, but she was waiting for me at the entrance so that we could walk in together. Fortunately, I had an extra t-shirt in my car to change into so I wasn't too sweaty, but I figured it wasn't likely to be a target-rich environment, so I didn't have much to lose. We walked to a table of about 8 women in the middle of the bar, and most of them said hello to Lori as we approached. She introduced me to the group, and rattled off their names, which I promptly forgot, and one of them said, "You're the tennis guy." I looked confused, so she repeated, "You're the tennis guy that Lori keeps talking about playing. It's good to meet you in the flesh." I didn't know it at the time, but that eventually became my name, Tennis Guy. The group pulled another table and several chairs and offered me a seat and a menu. I ordered a beer and a cheeseburger and began talking to a couple of the women seated next to me. Then another woman walked up to Lori, and they kissed. Lori turned to me and said, "Dave, this is my girlfriend Alexa." "Alexa, this is Dave, my tennis friend." We shook hands and exchanged nice to meet yous, and Alexa sat down next to me. I assumed I knew why Lori had asked me to come. She wanted me to meet Alexa. "Alexa," asked me, "you used to date Lori's roommate, Marnie, right? Isn't that a bit weird to be seeing Lori on a regular basis?" "No," I answered. "We never talk about her. I don't ask and Lori doesn't offer. Usually when we are together we spend most of the time playing tennis and not talking a lot. It's been almost 3 years now. I've moved on, okay, I was kind of lying to myself." We spent the next half hour talking. I found out how they met, Match.com, that Alexa owned a salon that offered haircuts and other services, like waxing, manicures/pedicures, beauty consultations, and the like. She had been the owner for 5 years, and was fairly successful. She had a degree in business and an interest in fashion, and she was able to combine the two skills into a successful business. She was shorter than Lori, with black spiky hair and exquisite makeup, yes, I noticed, and a fun, spunky personality. I could see why Lori liked her. At the end of the conversation, Alexa said, "Lori says you're the reason she came out." I tried to disagree, just saying I was just in the right place and the right time, but Alexa was firm, "No, it was more than that. She said you helped her clear her mind, and I know she appreciates that." "Well, that's nice to hear, so thank you." I'm sure it was hard for her, but she seems to have become more comfortable with her decision, I said. "She certainly seems happier now, more relaxed." "I imagine you are part of that too." Then Alexa added, "Lori's right. Marnie is an idiot for dumping you for Richard." I just laughed and said I will just have to come back more often. That became my Thursday night ritual for the summer. Lori and I would play for a couple of hours and I would meet her at the Grove for a couple of beers and a burger or other food. I eventually learned the names of most of their regular gang and they made me feel welcome. Lori and Alexa referred to me as Dave, but to the rest I was Tennis Guy or just Guy. Several of them joked I was the only guy they liked. Several of the group were nurses at the local hospital. They would work second shift so they would arrive around the same time Lori and I would from our tennis match. About 6 weeks after I started going to the Grove, several of the nurses, once they found out I was an accountant and worked in the investment area of my company, started asking me about their 401k investment options. That night I went over a few of the basics, but I offered to meet them at the hospital on my lunch break, and before they started their shifts, to go over their choices in more detail. I arrived at the hospital cafeteria at the arranged time, and as they had promised, the food was better than I would have expected, and instead of meeting with 2 of the group, Cindy and Joanna, there were 2 more who I hadn't met before, Samantha and Darcy, who was Alexa's younger sister, and also a nurse at the same hospital. I pulled out my laptop, never leave home without it, and went through their investment options with them. I tried to keep it simple and made suggestions about deferral percentages, investment choices, and other matters. They managed not to fall asleep and said what I told them was very helpful. I gave them my cell number and email address and told them to feel free to ask any questions if they had them, and then I joked this was the first time I had given my cell number out to women in a long time. They thanked me, but I told them that what I did was easy. What they did caring for those who needed help was a lot more difficult, and something I could never do. The Thursday following the meeting I did the normal tennis and Grove thing, and when I got ready to pay my bill to leave, the waitress said, "It's taken care of." Cindy and Joanna had arranged to pay for my bill as their thank you to me for the free consulting. I also got a couple of unexpected hugs in addition to free booze and food. So in addition to being the tennis guy, I was the CPA guy. About a month later, after a Thursday night match, Lori asked me to walk over to where her car was parked. When we arrived at her car, she opened the trunk and pointed to a black plastic trash bag. "Alexa has been on me to update my wardrobe. It seems I now have a personal shopper," laughed Lori. Alexa made me clear out some of my older clothes to make room for the new Alexa-approved additions. I was going to donate them to Goodwill, but then I realized we were probably about the same size, so maybe you would like them? I know you said you haven't been dressing lately, so if you don't want them, that's fine, and I'll just donate them. But if you are interested, I'd like you to have them. That was a surprise. A big surprise. A "what do I want to do" surprise. "This is unexpected," I blurted out. I wasn't sure if I wanted them or not. Lori was silent while I made my decision. "I'm not sure I want to open Pandora's box," I said, more to myself than to her. The angel and devil on my shoulders were arguing, and I wasn't sure which one was which. Finally, my body made the decision. Without a word, I reached into the trunk, grabbed and lifted the bag, and slammed the trunk shut, and started walking to my car. Lori just laughed, and then added to my anguish as I walked towards my car. "I've got another bag for you if you want it. See you at the Grove." I left the bag in the trunk of my car. Sunday morning I went for my weekly long run, listening to the radio over the internet, mulling in my mind what I wanted to do. Near the end of my run, I knew my decision. Or more accurately, I ran out of reasons why I shouldn't have a look at what Lori gave me. After my shower and breakfast, I went to my car and pulled the bag out of my trunk and carried it into my living room, curious as to what treasures waited inside, and whether they would fit me or not. I sat on my sofa and pulled out items one by one. A top, then a skirt, some panties, a couple of bras, a sweater dress, and so forth. All good quality, in good shape and good taste. I recognized many of the brand names. Everything was in a pile on the ottoman. The next test was whether they fit or not. I stripped and tried a pair of Victoria's Secret panties and a matching VS 38C bra. Lori was right, we were roughly the same size and they fit me. I walked into my bedroom to see myself in the mirror and to grab a pair of socks to stuff my bra. The view in the mirror pleased me. I walked back into the living room, grabbed the pile from the ottoman in both arms, and carried the load into my bedroom and dumped it on the bed. I sorted them into piles: panties, bras, tops, bottoms, skirts, jeans, slacks, and dresses. I started with the tops, and tried pairing the top with an appropriate bottom, followed by an assessment in the mirror. Several of the tops were too small, or didn't suit me, and a pair of the jeans and one of the skirts were much too small to fit. It was 90 minutes of being a kid on Christmas morning. I dug out my one pair of heels to help complete the look. I especially liked the combination of a black and white patterned top with a black wraparound skirt and a silver sweater dress that would likely need a pair of leggings. After I tried on all my hand-me-downs, I put the rejects in a bag for a future donation and stored the remaining items in a drawer in my closet except for the Minnie Mouse t-shirt and a pair of mom's skinny jeans, which I put on and returned to my living room to watch the ballgame on TV. I grabbed my phone, took a selfie showing the Minnie Mouse t-shirt, and typed out a text to Lori. "Thanks for the clothes. Took me a while to know what I wanted to do. It was a very nice gesture by you. Very happy to have your hand-me-downs. You were right. Most of your things fit. I will donate the ones that didn't fit or didn't work. Thanks again. See you Thursday." I attached the selfie and hit send and then typed and sent an afterthought. "I will gladly take your other bag." A few minutes later my phone pinged. The answering text was 2 smiley faces. It was a Thursday night in late August and Lori and I were talking and having a drink at the Grove following our match. I had won a set, lost the other 2, so I was feeling pretty good even without the aid of the alcohol. Lori asked me if I was available the last Saturday in September. I checked my calendar, found no conflicts, and said, "Sure." "What did you have in mind?" But Lori told me she'd just let me know later. The following Thursday night at the Grove, Lori let the cat out of the bag. My former high school is having a mixed doubles tournament on Saturday, September 24th. It's a fundraiser for their tennis team. I've entered us in the tournament. Don't you think you should have asked me first? I objected. "I did," said Lori. "No, you just asked whether I was available, not whether I wanted to play," raising my voice just a tad. "Oh well, too bad, so sad. We're entered." And to emphasize, Lori reached out and poked me in the chest, laughing. "And I've arranged for a couple of my friends to come out the next 2 Thursday nights so we can practice playing doubles together." You got a problem with that too? I folded like a cheap tent. The next 2 Thursdays were a master's class in doubles. Lori showed me the finer points of doubles strategies, where to stand, how to move to follow the play, what shots to use and which shots to avoid. It was clear she was all in for this tournament. The first week I was thinking instead of reacting, always a step slow, and playing stiffly. The second Thursday I began to get the feel, and Lori and I began to play as a real team. Her friends were solid players and longtime doubles partners, and they challenged us but made it a lot of fun to play. We played longer than usual until we had to stop when the timers turned off the court lights. I felt ready to play on Saturday, and belatedly and reluctantly apologized to Lori for berating her about signing us up for the tournament. With 16 teams entered in the tournament, we were guaranteed at least 2 matches, with a maximum of 4 matches, depending on how many matches we won. As our first match was at 9 a.m., we arrived at the high school courts at 8:30 to warm up before we started. The weather was perfect for tennis, sunny, a slight breeze, temperatures in the 70s. I felt a bit nervous, having never played in a competitive tournament before. I became a bit more nervous when I found out we were the second seed, because of Lori's reputation as a high school player. To her credit, Lori told me to relax and have fun, but there was no doubt she was ready to win some matches. Our first match was against a husband and wife team, parents of one of the high school team members. Lori and I started slowly, and I made a few errors to begin, but we were younger and better. Well, Lori was better, and we won 6-2, 6-2. I breathed a big sigh of relief when we won the final point. The next match started at 11:30, against another team that won its first match. During warm-ups, I knew our opponents were better than the first team we played. Once again, Lori told me to just go out and play, and that helped me relax a bit. They were better opponents, but at some point I realized being challenged by better players was fun, even though points were harder to win. The match was tighter, but we won the key points in the match, 6-3, 6-3, advancing to the semifinals. Lori, because of her history of playing in tons of youth tournaments, was a lot more comfortable with the rhythm of play, sit, play. We drove to a nearby deli for lunch and Lori talked a bit of strategy, but also said I was playing pretty well. She then added, "Thanks for playing. This brings back memories. When I was young, I was so focused on winning I never considered it to be fun. But this is fun." Then she smiled and added, "But I still want to win." Our semifinal was in the early afternoon and was tight throughout, but we managed to finish strong and win 7-5, 7-5. We were happy and, in the finals, to be played under the lights at 7 p.m. I went home and tried to rest and relax. I also called my parents to let them know I was playing in the finals. They were happy for me and said they would see me at the courts. Match time finally arrived and my nerves were going crazy. We were playing on the main court and there were 50 to 60 spectators watching from the bleachers. Lori just told me to smile and breathe and enjoy, but the advice wasn't working. The first set was like I had never played before. I hit balls everywhere, into the net, long, wide. Our opponents saw that I was struggling and aimed most of their returns at me. Before long, we lost the first set 1-6. During the changeover break after the first set I apologized to Lori for playing so badly. She just answered, "There are 2 rules of tennis. 1, never give up. 2, never assume anything." Then she looked me in the eye and said, "Just go play." And I did. I'm not sure what happened. All of a sudden everything slowed down and the tennis ball looked like a beach ball. I was in the proverbial zone. I couldn't miss. Our opponents kept returning the ball to me, but I made shot after shot. Between points I paced like a caged tiger, ready for the next point. It was unreal. The next thing I knew, Lori and I were high-fiving and the match was over. We shook hands with our opponents at the net and they congratulated us on the win. I am sure they were wondering what happened because I was wondering what happened. Lori smiled at me and asked, "What have you done with my partner?" I could only laugh. I realized we hadn't said a word during the second set and match tiebreaker changeovers, and I told that to Lori. She said, "I didn't want to wake you from your trance." We gathered our rackets, bags, and assorted gear and walked off the courts. Alexa congratulated Lori and me and gave me a high five and Lori a kiss. My parents walked up and Mom gave me a hug, and Dad shook my hand and told me how well I played. I introduced them to Lori and Alexa, and then the tournament director, Lori's former high school coach, awarded us our trophies in a brief ceremony. It wasn't quite the royal family at Wimbledon, but it was fun nonetheless. I was talking with my parents, still floating in the aftermath, when I heard a voice behind me say, "Congratulations." A voice I knew well. A voice I hadn't heard for 3 years. Marnie's voice. I turned to her voice and saw her standing with a taller guy, who looked like a model for GQ. Marnie spoke and said, "This is Richard," and we shook hands, and he said, "Nice match." I thanked him and said it was a lot of fun. Marnie then said, "Lori told me the 2 of you were playing in the final, and we came to watch. You and Lori played well together." I agreed we did, and then added, "I had a good coach." Marnie then said, "Good to see you," and turned with Richard to say goodbye to Lori. I resumed talking with my parents. They said they were surprised to see Marnie, and I answered, "So was I." I assumed Lori figured I would be nervous enough about playing, without the complications of knowing my ex was watching, so she didn't tell me Marnie was coming. My parents and I made arrangements to meet at a local restaurant for a late dinner. I walked over to Lori for a last hurrah before I left for dinner. Alexa had us grab our respective trophies for a victory photo, so we posed, with big goofy smiles on our faces, while she took multiple shots with her phone. Lori then said, "Bring it in," and we had a big hug, and then she smiled and said, "Aren't you glad I asked you to play?" She then added they were headed to the Grove. I told her I would stop by after dinner with my parents. Near the end of dinner with my parents, I texted Lori and she replied they were still at the Grove. I texted back, "Be there soon." My phone chirped, "FYI, Marnie's here." I replied, "Thanks for the heads up." On my way, the Grove was more crowded than I was used to. I had only been there on Thursday nights, and there was a larger crowd for a Saturday night. I found the table with Lori and Alexa after stopping at the bar and buying a beer. At the table there were several familiar faces from the Thursday night gang, along with a couple others I didn't know. There appeared to be an open seat saved for me directly opposite Marnie. I laughed inside and thought, this might get interesting. As I approached the table, several of the women at the table started clapping and cheering, and Lori, who was standing next to the table and talking to someone I didn't know, turned and smiled, and we clanked our beer bottles and exchanged high fives. I said, "Thanks" to the group and went to sit down at the open seat, getting a couple more high fives from some of the others. As I sat, I heard Marnie say in a mocking tone, "I hear you're a regular here. Getting in touch with your feminine side? Interesting, indeed." Based on her facial expressions and tone of voice, she was clearly unhappy I was there. I ignored the last barb and just answered in a low voice, "I come here because I seem to be welcome here. I don't have that many friends where I can choose to be that picky. What's it to you how I choose to spend my time?" Marnie then pointed to another table, which appeared to be a group of women somewhere on the trans spectrum, and she said, "More friends of yours? Wouldn't you like to join them instead?" I decided this statement didn't deserve an answer. I also noticed that Alexa seemed to be listening into our conversation, and she appeared to be no happier with Marnie than I was. Marnie ignored the silence and piled on, "I guess you're not man enough, so you can only hang out with women who aren't interested in you." I stood up. In a low but firm voice, I answered, "Excuse me. I've had too good of a day to let you ruin it. I shared with you my innermost secret because I thought the person I cared a lot about deserved to know. It didn't turn out how I hoped. But I can look at myself in the mirror and know I did the right thing. I'm not going to sit here and let you insult me, so good night." I walked over to Lori, told her I was going, and said I would explain when we talked next. I was watching the NFL a little after 1 on Sunday when my cell phone rang. I saw it was Lori, muted the TV, and answered the phone with my normal hello. "Dave, this is Lori. I just want to let you know I read Marnie the Riot Act after you left. Alexa told me what happened and how she was rude to you. I told her that you were my good friend and she couldn't treat you that way. I want her to apologize to you, but I don't think she is going to." "Thanks, I appreciate that," I answered. I'm not sure why she went off on me. I hadn't even said anything to her. "She's been a little cross with me lately too," replied Lori. "I'm not sure what the deal is. But I am sorry you had to deal with it. I will try not to let it bother me." "It's pretty clear that bridge has been burned," I answered. Lori then said Alexa wanted to speak to me, and handed her the phone. "So why haven't you told me that you're a crossdresser?" she demanded. You know we're a LGBT place, we have many trans clients. I explained the last time I told someone it didn't turn out well, so I was extremely hesitant to do it again. It wasn't personal, it was a defense mechanism. Plus, I wasn't dressing anymore. Well, maybe I tried on a few of the items Lori gave me from time to time, so there was nothing to tell. And then she surprised me. I owe you one. When you are ready, come in and we will give you the royal treatment. Makeover, manicure, pedicure, waxing, whatever. It will be on the house. You can be a girl for a day and see how you look. My team will be here to serve you. No judgment, just smiles and support. Sound good to you? It did. But right then I wasn't ready. Thanks, I appreciate the offer, and it is a wonderful offer. But I'm not ready to start dressing again. Can I take a rain check? Alexa answered, absolutely, and then added, you didn't deserve the abuse from Marnie last night. She was mean-spirited. You should know we consider you a regular at the Grove and everyone knows how respectful and accepting you are. I hope you aren't letting what she said bother you. I was touched by what she said, and simply said, thank you. Alexa then just added, the offer stands, so when you are ready, just let me know, and we'll make you pretty. I headed to the gym and hopped on the elliptical, trying to concentrate on the 2 NFL games on the big screen TVs on the wall, and unsuccessfully trying to ignore Alexa's offer. The more I thought no, the more I thought it was an offer I couldn't refuse. I kept thinking about a Peanuts Sunday comic strip I had seen several years before. In the first panel, Charlie Brown tells Snoopy that he's leaving him extra food in his bowl because they were going out of town, and the extra food was for tomorrow. The subsequent panels showed Snoopy trying to ignore his bowl. The next to last panel showed Snoopy leaping from the top of his doghouse, and the last showed Snoopy with an empty bowl, saying, I would have killed myself if tomorrow never came. After dinner I called Lori and asked her to put Alexa on the phone. Does your offer still stand? I asked. Absolutely, Alexa said, with a smile in her voice. Well then, I accept. Excellent. You're going to love it. Alexa mentioned that Halloween was coming up in 4 weeks, and the Grove had a big Halloween party the Saturday night before Halloween. We agreed on that date, and she said she would make up a list of services, but it would be a surprise for me. She also told me to pick out a few things I liked of the items that Lori gave me and text her pictures of them, and she would have me bring them to the makeover. And that I would need to shave my legs. I hung up and had a big goofy smile on my face. It was going to be a long 4 weeks, but it also meant I had 4 weeks to work on my girlish figure and to let my nails grow. The next Thursday at tennis, Lori teased me a bit about my spa day, but then added that Alexa was almost giddy about having me come in. She asked if I was looking forward to it. I think I told you I was jealous when I was a kid of all the boys who got to dress up as girls on Halloween. Now, it's going to be my turn, I answered. I can't wait. I played like crap that night, distracted by my thoughts, and lost 3 lopsided sets. At the Grove, I tried to pump Alexa for further info, but all she would say was, I'm sure you'll have fun. The week of my spa day finally arrived. On Tuesday I stopped at Walgreens and bought a 3-pack of ladies' razors, a bottle of Nair, some bubble bath, and some nude pantyhose. In for a nickel, in for a dime. I went home and read the instructions and applied the Nair around my knees and on my arms. Somewhere along the line I decided if I was shaving my legs, I was shaving my arms too. I waited the recommended time and jumped in the shower and ran the water and rubbed the areas I had applied the Nair with a washcloth. I was now a lot less hairy. I then filled the bathtub with hot water and the bubble bath, and then climbed in and did my best at shaving my legs. It took a while, and a nick or two, but in the end, I was happy with my hair-free legs. I had taken a before picture of my legs and then took an after, and texted both to Alexa. A few minutes later the response was a smiley face, and the comment, "Nice legs." All I could think to myself was, wait until you see them in heels and hose. Yes, I was ready for Saturday to arrive. On Thursday Alexa texted me that I was scheduled for the spa at 10 a.m. I was confused. If the party was at night, why was I going in so early? Alexa texted back, "We're going to make you pretty, so don't you want to be pretty for a whole day, rather than just a few hours?" A whole day? I was nervous and excited at the same time. Then came the follow-up. "Besides, I have plans for you." OMG. What have I gotten myself into? That night at tennis Lori wouldn't say anything about what Alexa had planned for me, but merely said, "Ask Alexa." Later at the Grove, when I asked Alexa for details, she smiled and said, "What fun would it be if I spoiled the surprise?" She then leaned in and in a half-whisper in my ear she said, "The next time you walk into these doors you are going to be dressed the way you have wanted to dress for most of your life. I'm planning a day that you'll remember the rest of your life." Then she kissed me on the cheek and said, "You deserve it." Overwhelmed, all I could say was, "Okay." Friday might have been the longest day of my life. I couldn't focus, and time seemed to drag. I finally decided to leave a half hour early to hit the Y. On my way out my boss Sylvia said, "Have a good weekend." Got anything planned? If she only knew. Saturday morning, after a restless night, I woke up and did my final prep. Shave with a razor and shaving cream, then with my electric razor. Hop in the shower and shave my arms and legs. I was beginning to love the feeling of hairless arms and legs. I dressed in a t-shirt and sweatpants, as Alexa had suggested. She didn't suggest panties, but I chose to wear my favorite pair of the ones Lori had given me. I also put on a pair of control top panties to make sure everything down there stayed in their proper place. I packed my heels, the bra that matched the panties I was wearing, my wig, the top and skirt that Alexa had suggested, and the pantyhose I had bought into my gym bag. Finally, it was time to go. I was nervous walking into the salon, but fortunately no one was in the reception area when I entered. A few seconds later, one of Alexa's team entered the area and asked, "Dave?" I nodded, and she said with a smile, "Please follow me." I followed and was led into a room where a smiling woman said, "Hi, I'm Michelle, and I'm going to do your waxing today." Her voice was friendly with a distinct southern accent. "I hear you are friends with Alexa, and that we're treating you to a special day. Ready to get started?" She had me sit on a bench and examine my face. "First I'm going to clean up the hair around your ears and nose, and then I'm going to give you some girly eyebrows." I asked, "Do I have a say in this?" I wasn't worried about facial hair, but my eyebrows? Michelle said, "No. I'm just following the boss's orders." She went to work, sticking wax on sticks into my ears and nose, waiting a few seconds, and then pulling quickly. It wasn't painful, but a bit uncomfortable. Next she found some strips and began waxing my eyebrows. After a couple of rips, Michelle held up a hand mirror, and yes, I had girly eyebrows. I simultaneously loved and hated the look, fearful of the backlash post-Halloween. Michelle then handed me a towel and told me to take off my t-shirt and pants, and to lie down on the table on my stomach and cover my butt with the towel. She then excused herself while I stripped and then did what she asked. I smelled an aroma that I guessed was scented wax. Michelle knocked on the door and entered. "Ever have your back waxed?" she asked. "No," I answered. "Is it gonna hurt?" I asked. "Not too much," she said with a smile. She went to work, applying the wax, waiting, and then giving me a warning, and rip. That wasn't too bad, was it? I just grunted. It became more tolerable, and after about 10 minutes of the torture, she had me flip over on my back and started applying the wax to my chest. At this point, there was a knock on the door, and Alexa stuck her head and asked Michelle, "How is our client behaving?" I stuck my tongue out at her, and Alexa and Michelle laughed. My chest hairs were stubborn and they came off reluctantly, but I tried not to whimper too much. I lowered my estimate of my pain tolerance by a couple of notches. Michelle did clean up on a few strays, and I was hairless down to roughly my nipples. She handed me a bottle of lotion and asked me to rub it on my chest and back. The hairless feeling was a new experience, similar to my shaved legs a few nights prior. I liked the look. I asked Michelle if many men came in for waxing, and she answered, "More than you would expect." Then she added, "But usually only their backs." She then said I was done and she would step out and I could put my t-shirt and sweatpants back on. I did, but not before I checked my new lookout in the mirror. There was a knock and Alexa stuck her head in the room again and asked, "Ready for your makeover?" I just nodded, but internally I was thinking, I've been ready for 20 years. Alexa led me to the main part of the salon and had me sit on a tall stool and said, "Julie will be with you shortly." There were 4 or 5 other women in the room getting various treatments, but no one seemed to particularly notice me. Julie walked up and introduced herself, and I noticed her makeup was exquisite, so I figured I was in good hands. I was loving every minute. Julie explained what she was doing, first lotion, then primer, foundation, concealer, powder, eye primer, eyeshadow, eyeliner, mascara, rouge. The last step was lipstick, asking me to pucker, press my lips together, etc. I was taking mental notes the best I could, trying to remember each step. She was patient and kind and bubbly, asking me questions about the Halloween party, telling me how good of a boss Alexa was, and how much fun I was going to have. I was facing away from a mirror she said that was Alexa's orders so I couldn't see the progress. Finally, she was finished, and brushed through my wig, placed the wig on my head, and brushed some more. Then with a big smile, she said, "Done," and asked another staffer to chase down Alexa. Alexa walked in and didn't say anything, but just broke into a big smile and clapped her hands and with a big smile said, "Fabulous," and congratulated Julie. Julie was smiling too. I was in torture. How did I look? Alexa extended the torture by telling me to close my eyes, and she was going to take me in her room to get dressed before I could see myself. I said, "No fair," but she just stuck out her tongue and said, "Close your eyes," so I did. She then took my arm and escorted me about 15 to 20 steps, telling me to wait. I heard a door closing and she said, "You can open your eyes now." I saw the outfit I had brought lying out on a chair. Alexa said, "You'll be happier seeing yourself made up if you're dressed," and I saw her point. She then said she'd help me get dressed, so I wouldn't mess up the makeup. I was a bit embarrassed, even more so when she said to strip my bottoms off including the panties to put on the pantyhose. She said the hose would sit better under my panties, and smiled and said as they were control top hose they would help keep certain parts of me in better control. Fortunately, she did turn her back, and I managed to put on the pantyhose without incident, and put on the panties and control panties, and the skirt. I told Alexa she could turn around. Almost there, she said. She helped me remove the t-shirt without disturbing the wig or makeup, then had me hold out my arms to help me into the bra, and she fastened it in the back. Next, she handed a pair of foam rubber inserts to insert into the cups, and then carefully helped me into the top, again not touching the wig or makeup. She stepped back, smiled, and said, "Nice." Her eyes were smiling too. She handed me my heels and I slid them on. "Ready for the big reveal?" Alexa asked. Nervous and excited, I could only nod my head. Of course, Alexa made me wait a little longer. She told me to close my eyes again and to keep them closed until she said I could open them. I heard her leave the room, close the door, and about a minute later heard the door open again. "Eyes closed?" "Yes," I answered. "Ready?" "Absolutely," I answered. She took my arm again and we walked again, and then told me to stop. She said on the count of 3 I could open my eyes. 1, 2, 3. I opened my eyes, saw myself in the mirror, and saw there were 20 others in the room smiling and applauding. It was me, but it wasn't me. I looked better than I thought I would. I could see the guy underneath, but it was struggling to erase the girl me. And the girl me was smiling, big time. I noticed Alexa had her phone, and she was taking pictures, actually video, as I found out a few minutes later. I heard lots of wows and "you look great," and I had a giddy stupid smile I couldn't erase while I stared at myself in the mirror. Next it was pictures of me and Michelle, and me and Julie, and me and Alexa, and just me. The others returned to their stations, both assistants and customers, and resumed their services. Finally, Alexa asked me, "How do you feel?" Great. Better than I ever guessed. Wondering why I waited so long to do this. "You were right, I will remember this for a long time," I said. "I can't thank you enough." Alexa simply said, "Your smile is thanks enough." She then handed me her phone. It was a text to Lori with my picture, and the text back was beautiful, "And you look so great, I want those clothes back." With 2 smiley faces. I texted back, "No way, you aren't getting these back. They're mine." The phone pinged with 2 more smiley faces, and I handed it back to Alexa. She then smiled at me and asked, "Ready to get your nails done?" 45 minutes later, courtesy of Michelle, I had beautiful nails with a dark red color that matched my lipstick. During the time I was having my nails done, the other customers who were finishing up would walk up and tell me how great I looked, and wished me a happy Halloween. In a little over 2 hours, I went from a toad to a princess. As it was just after noon, Alexa walked up to me and said, "Our Saturday tradition is to order lunch from the place next door." She handed me a notepad and said, "Your job is to walk around and write down the orders of all the staff, and I'll go online and order them." She then smiled at me. "And you can walk over and pick them up." I felt like a non-swimmer being thrown into the deep end of the pool. Watching me panic, Alexa said not to worry, that I looked great, and nobody would care. But to tease me a little more, she added, "You might want to come up with a name, because it might be a little curious when you walk over and ask for a pickup for Dave." I walked through the salon, taking orders from Julie and Michelle and the 5 others I hadn't met. They introduced themselves and made me feel welcome, then added Alexa's and my order. I found my phone in my gym bag, thinking to myself, I guess I need a purse, went online, and punched in the order. It was a pretty easy decision to pick up the tab, after all the staff had done for me. It was much harder to fill in the blank for the name of the order. After a few minutes, I decided the path of least resistance was to just use my first initial, and I typed in D and placed the order. My phone pinged and the automated text said the order would be ready for pickup in 15 minutes. 14 minutes later, I steeled myself and stepped out the door, hoping I wouldn't encounter any incoming clients. I had read stories of others walking in clicking heels feeling the air on their legs, and I had to mentally pinch myself and realize it was happening to me. The lunch place was a block away, and despite the Saturday lunch crowd, I managed to open the door, enter, walk to the pickup counter, and say in my softest voice, "Pick up for D." 1 minute later, Sandy behind the counter handed me 2 large paper bags and said, "Here's your order. Have a nice day, ma'am." I floated back to the salon. I delivered the orders to each of the staff, giving the same answer when they offered to pay that it was on me, and getting thanks. I saved the last for Alexa, and told her the same. She said, "You didn't have to, but I'm sure all my team will appreciate it." As Alexa was on a break between clients, we sat together in their break room and ate our sandwiches. As I wasn't used to eating wearing lipstick, I was trying to be extra careful not to ruin my look. She asked me how my day was going, and I just answered, "Amazing." She then said that I could go, or if I wanted to, I could stick around for the afternoon and be the receptionist for the salon, greeting clients when they arrived, letting the staff know when their clients arrived, etc. I decided being the receptionist for the day might be fun, so I said I'd do that. After finishing our lunches, Alexa then guided me to the front desk and showed me a brief introduction to their computer system. She also asked if I'd be willing to balance their checking account, and after I said yes, got me access to their online banking account and business accounting system. Every workday I sit at a keyboard, but this was the first time with beautiful nails. Perched on the stool at the elevated desk, swapping windows between a spreadsheet, their accounting package, and the bank website with a goofy smile, while trying to sit ladle-like with my legs together. Customers would enter about every 10 or 15 minutes, and I would welcome them, enter their names in the computer, then carefully hop down from the stool and walk to their service provider and let them know their customer had arrived. I was a bit nervous for the first 2 or 3 arrivals, but after that I became comfortable with the routine. Between the interruptions for the arrivals, I managed to find the missing items to balance the account. Alexa then gave me some additional paperwork and bills, so I made the payments on the internet banking website and then updated everything in the accounting system. As she usually did all of the bookkeeping for the salon, she was very happy to offload it to me, and during the afternoon I cleaned up all of the paperwork backlog. I also managed to take a number of selfies with my phone, so it wasn't all work and no play. Before I knew it, it was almost 6 o'clock, closing time for the spa. The old adage, time flies when you're having fun. Several of the patrons complimented my look, saying I looked cute, and many offering, "Happy Halloween," when they left. The last customers left a little after 6, and the other staff a few minutes later after doing their final cleanup. I got hugs from Julie and Michelle when they left, and both told me to come back again, and to have a fun night out. That left Alexa and me as the last 2 to close up. Alexa then informed me we were meeting Lori at a local restaurant for dinner, before heading to the Grove after eating. The restaurant was an unexpected turn for me, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that, but she just said it's Halloween weekend and I would be fine. Then Alexa said she needed to change into her costume and I needed to change into my evening outfit. She walked into a closet and came out holding Lori's red off-the-shoulder bridesmaid dress, a pair of strappy red heels, a strapless bra, and a pair of devil's horns, adding, "Why do you think we waxed your back and chest?" She handed them to me, told me I should leave the pantyhose on, and pointed to a room where I could change. She then went into another room to change into her costume. The dress was as beautiful as I remembered it. I carefully pulled my top over my head, trying my best not to mess up my wig and makeup. I kicked off my black heels, then unzipped the skirt and let it drop to the floor. I managed to unhook the bra behind my back, then donned the strapless bra, fastened it in front, spun it around, and placed the foam inserts in the strapless cups. I then turned away from the mirror in the room, unzipped the dress, and stepped into it. I held my breath as I pulled it up, put my right arm in the sleeve, adjusted it for fit, and then reached behind my back to try to zip it. I got it about halfway up, then it stuck for a second, but I stretched and inhaled and zipped it all the way up. Yes! I gathered the red heels and walked over to a chair to put them on. They had about a 2.5-inch heel, which I figured I could manage. I slid them on, fastened the buckle on each, and managed to stand up without too much difficulty. I put the devil ears in place, then closed my eyes, walked over to the mirror, and counted 3, 2, 1, and opened them. Loved the look. Loved it. Loved it. I had left my phone at the desk and I desperately needed to take a picture, so I walked out to get it. At the same time, Alexa emerged from her room, dressed as a very cute Robin from Batman and Robin. She saw me and said, "Damn girl, you look great," but the beaming look on her face told me how she really felt. I told her I needed pictures, and handed her my phone. She answered that I had to wait a few more minutes because she had a few more finishing touches, and went back into her room. She came out with a red clutch purse, the same one Lori had at the wedding, and started pulling accessories out of the purse. Alexa had me turn around and attached a pearl, or fake pearl, how do I know, necklace around my neck. Next was a pair of silver clip-on earrings, which she showed me how to put on. Finally, a couple of silver bracelets to complete the accessories. Next, she grabbed some brushes and eye makeup, and added several shades of red to my eyes, and then rouge to my cheeks. Finally, she pulled out a bright red lipstick, and went to work on my lips. With that final touch, she said she was done and stepped back and said that I was one sexy devil. We spent the next 5 minutes with Alexa taking pictures of me in various poses using multiple backdrops in the salon. All the time she was smiling and I was smiling, and I couldn't believe this was happening. Alexa's phone pinged with a text from Lori, saying she was at the restaurant, so we needed to get going. The restaurant was about a 10-minute drive, and Alexa offered to drive. She then gave me a silver sweater to put on to ward off the chill, and the red purse. I put my wallet, car keys, and my phone in the purse, and then Alexa handed me the red lipstick, and I added it to the purse. During the drive, Alexa asked me if I was nervous. I merely answered, excited. I was very happy we drove together because the restaurant was crowded and I would not have wanted to walk in on my own, but Alexa helped me relax. We approached the reservations desk, the staffer told us to follow her, and I tried to look straight ahead and not see how people were reacting. She led us to a booth, said, "Here's your table," and then turned to me and said, "I love that dress." I softly answered, "Thanks." As I expected, sitting on one side of the booth, dressed in a Batman costume, was Lori, and she was smiling and said I looked great. Before I had a chance to thank her, I saw another person at the table, sitting on the opposite booth, dressed like Charlie Chaplin. OMG, Marnie. Alexa sat next to Lori, and they said hello and kissed. I was still standing, in shock, wondering what in the hell was happening, when Charlie Chaplin said, "Please have a seat." I won't bite. So I did, as gracefully as I could in a slinky dress and heels. The best I could muster was, "Can someone tell me what's going on?" Both Lori and Alexa pointed to Marnie. Marnie started in. "First, I want to apologize for being a bitch the last time. I wasn't happy with Richard and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair to you, and I'm sorry. Not what I expected to hear, but then again, Today was a day of surprises, so I just added it to the pile. Apology accepted, I answered. Second, I found out a couple of weeks ago that Richard was also sleeping with someone else. When I found out and confronted him, let's just say I didn't like the answers very much. Marnie then added, Richard is now my ex-boyfriend. At which point our waitress appeared, dressed in a pirate costume, and asked if we wanted drinks. Batman and Robin ordered beers, Charlie Chaplin a white wine, and I asked for a frozen margarita. The waitress left after saying she'd be back for our orders when she delivered our drinks. After the waitress left, Lori and Alexa once again pointed to Marnie. Lori invited me out tonight to come along. She said I needed a night out and to have some fun, Marnie said. She told me you were coming, and that you were going to be dressed up, and that if I came I would need to apologize and behave. She went on. Lori showed me the pictures from today. I could see one thing from the pictures. You were happy. You obviously enjoy doing this. I answered as honestly as I could. I do enjoy this. I've wanted to do this for a long time. This has been one of the best days in my life, and I pointed at Lori and Alexa, and they and Alexa's team made it possible, and for that, I will be forever grateful. Both Lori and Alexa reached out and squeezed my hands and smiled. I went on. I'm a guy and I like being a guy. But for whatever reason, I like dressing as a girl too, and I have since I was very young. So yes, doing this definitely pleases me. I then turned towards Marnie and said, my only regret is that it cost me you, but I had to tell you the truth, because you deserved it. Of course, our waitress reappeared with our drinks, and took our food orders. She left, with the 900-pound gorilla lurking in the background, but I figured we would move on to other topics. Until Marnie reached out and took my hand. I appreciate you being honest with me. 3 years ago, I couldn't deal with you. I then met Richard and thought I was happy. Then I discovered what was happening and I crashed. Thanks to my BFF, Marnie smiled, and then reached out and held Lori's hand. I'm beginning to recover. That's great. I'm happy for you, I answered. Marnie then turned again to face me, and softly said, I think my recovery includes you too. Would you be willing to try again? OMG, OMG, OMG. Am I hearing what I think I'm hearing? All I could say was, I think I would like that. And I hear Lori and Alexa clapping and whooping. Marnie then leaned over and kissed me on the cheek, laughing, I don't want to ruin your makeup. She then added, you look better as a woman than I would have ever expected. I'm not sure I tasted my food at dinner. I was buzzed from the frozen margarita and from the events of the day. I ordered a salad to best coexist with my makeup and tried desperately not to spill anything on the dress. I also seemed to have some extra bumps that I needed to avoid spilling food on. Alexa explained at dinner that she arranged with one of her transgender clients for the foam inserts, the heels, and the accessories, and the client was happy to lend them but wanted to see some pictures. I said I would be glad to pose, and to thank the client for me. I paid for dinner, and then realized I needed a personal comfort break. Marnie had sympathy for me and said she would go with me. I was sure every eye in the place was on me as I tried to gracefully walk to the ladies' room, but maybe I was imagining things. Before I opened the door, Marnie teased me in a low voice, remember to sit and not stand. Even sitting after the difficulty of lowering my hose and undergarments was a challenge, as with the heels I was several inches taller than I was used to. I did my business, rearranged everything, and stepped out of the stall. I walked to the sinks to wash my hands, and couldn't resist admiring the view in the mirror. Marnie was patiently waiting for me to escort me back to our table. We got ready to leave and the waitress came to the table to pick up the credit card slip and bust the table. She told us thanks for coming in, and have a good night. She then turned to me and said, "You look hot." I'm sure I turned as red as the dress and the other three just laughed hysterically. Marnie was the designated driver, so we all walked to her car for the drive to the Grove. When we reached her car, she busted my chops a little more and went and opened the passenger door for me. I responded by doing my best girly imitation, plopping my butt in the seat, holding my knees together, and swiveling my legs into the car. Marnie merely said, "Bravo," and closed the door. We arrived at the Grove around 9 and it was rapidly filling up. We found a table with a few of the Thursday regulars and a couple of empty chairs. I was curious as to the reactions of those who knew the guy me. Two of them looked at me and started smiling as the light went on, while a third had a quizzical look on her face. The third turned to the others to figure out who I was, and when they said under their breath who I was, she just turned and said, "Wow," and came over and gave me a big hug. The other two did the same and said I looked great. For the first time of many times that night, I described my day in a Cliff Notes version. They also wanted pictures with the hot devil and I was happy to oblige. Then a DJ started playing dance music and I got dragged out to the dance floor to show my moves. With the heels, my moves were definitely limited, but I seemed to be a hit. There was a wide range of Halloween costumes for both the men and the women and the TBD, including drag queens and kings in many racy outfits. Over time I felt less and less exposed and more at home. The Thursday regulars bought me drinks and wouldn't let me leave the dance floor, although after about an hour I ditched the heels and just danced in my stocking-clad feet part to relieve the ache in my feet, but mostly because I found that alcohol and heels didn't mix well for me. After about an hour of dancing, I escaped the dance floor and found Marnie. I apologized for ignoring her, but she just shook her head and smiled and said, "It's your night, and you should enjoy yourself. Besides, I'm getting all the scoops on you from all your friends." She then added, "They only say good things about you." And then she kissed me on the lips and said, "It's good to see you happy." She then grabbed my hand and said, "Come with me." She led me to a quieter area of the bar so we could talk. "I'm still dealing with this," she started, and she motioned up and down with her hands, "but I think I can. I know doing this is your big secret, but I'm not sure I want to be part of the secret. I'm not sure I can handle that part of it. If we're out together and you're dressed up and we meet someone one or both of us knows, how would we deal with that? Are we going to be embarrassed? What about social media and your friends posting pictures of you? What happens then? I guess what I'm saying is I'm willing to be with you, the true you, the boy and girl you, but I don't think I'm willing to be in the closet with you. I'm not sure I can handle that pressure." I just nodded while I tried to compose an answer. Given the alcohol I had consumed, I was somewhat buzzed and my mind was spinning. Marnie was okay with me dressing, and going out with me dressing. But was I ready to show everyone a side of me I had hidden for so long? I suspect the alcohol helped my decision-making process, but I decided the reward of having a second chance with Marnie exceeded the potential cost of coming out. "Thank you for being honest with me. Thank you for giving us a chance again. I'm willing to come out of hiding," I answered. "Stay here. Give me a minute." I hurried over to my purse. I giggled at the idea of my purse and took my phone out and walked back to Marnie. I opened the Facebook app and wrote a quick paragraph about my day, added that going out on Halloween dressed had been a desire of mine for a long time, and thanked Alexa and the team at Alexa's salon. I added 5 pictures of me, both from earlier in the day, and one of Alexa, Lori, Marnie, and me. I tagged them all, and handed my phone to Marnie. She read it quickly and nodded. "Are you really ready to do this?" she asked. "Yes, but hit post before I change my mind," I said. She did. I then posted the same pictures to Instagram, added a few comments, and posted them too. Marnie then took my hand and said, "Come dance with me, girlfriend," and we did. Half an hour and multiple dances later, I dared to retrieve my phone again from my purse. A lot of people must not have a lot to do at 10:30 on a Saturday night because my posts on both media had a number of comments and likes, with a number of wows and "you look great" along with a couple of "what are you doing with Marnie?" questions. I also noted that Marnie had clicked love on all 5 pictures. While I was reviewing Facebook, my phone pinged with a text from my boss Sylvia. "OMG, you look great. I would have never guessed it was you." Sylvia was around 40, married to a great guy with 2 great kids, and an excellent boss. She was one of my Facebook friends. "Thanks. Been a fun day," I texted back. I added a couple of other pictures I hadn't posted on Facebook and hit send. I then typed out, "I have to confess moonlighting at the salon," and added a picture of me at a monitor. LOL. You know Halloween is actually Monday, don't you? Followed by a smiley face. Sobering up quickly, I texted back, "What do you mean?" and hit send. "You can come into work dressed if you like," came the quick reply. "I'm not sure I can do that," I typed back. "I would be disappointed if you didn't," followed by 2 frowny faces. Shit. I think I sobered up in 5 seconds flat. I walked over to Marnie and showed her my phone and the texts. I was hoping for sympathy. I got hysterical laughter. "What's so funny?" I asked. Never thought I'd have to take my boyfriend out dress shopping. I woke up around 10:30 the next morning a bit disoriented. I realized I was in Marnie's bedroom and hazy bits and pieces of the night before hit my memory, climbing into the car when the bar closed, stumbling into Marnie's bathroom, feeling sad when I used the makeup remover pads to remove the makeup, then stumbling to bed, and falling asleep dead to the world. I had been in no condition to drive, and my car was still at Alexa's salon anyway. I managed to make it to the bathroom and I noticed I was still wearing the panties from the night before. I did my business and while washing my hands noticed a bottle of ibuprofen sitting on the counter, so I took 2 and washed them down with a handful of water from the tap. Returning to the bedroom, I noticed a t-shirt and some sweatpants on a chair, and as they appeared to be a bit larger than Marnie would wear, I assumed they were Lori's and left for me to wear. I put them on and staggered to the kitchen where I found Marnie, Alexa, and Lori drinking coffee and chatting. Alexa spotted me first and said boisterously, "Good morning, Miss Sunshine." I merely grunted. Marnie asked, "Want some breakfast?" and after nodding yes, I found a cereal I liked, poured myself a bowl and gobbled it down, accompanied by a banana. I began to feel a bit more human. The 3 others talked, but I wasn't really listening. I finally realized one of them, I think Lori, had asked me a question. I asked her to repeat it. "So was yesterday everything you hoped for?" she asked. "Yeah, it was great. A fabulous makeover, going out in public dressed, dancing in a sexy dress and heels and finding out someone I have feelings for is giving me a second chance. Doesn't get much better than that." My answer was rewarded with 3 smiling faces. Eventually, I learned the plans for the day, which the 3 had arranged the night before, without my knowledge. Lori was going to take me to the salon, to pick up my car and the boy and girl clothes I had also left there. After I drove home, I would have a chance to quickly shower and shave, because at one Alexa's sister Darcy and her friend Cindy, 2 of the 4 I had advised for their 401(k)s, were picking me up to do some shopping. Girl shopping because I was going to work Monday dressed. In for a nickel, in for a dime. Darcy and Cindy arrived a little past 1. They had been at the Grove the night before and they dragged me out to the dance floor a few times to dance with them and their group. I asked Darcy if Alexa had roped her into taking me out today, but she quickly answered no, we volunteered. We love shopping and this is our way of paying you back for all the advice you've given us. We're gonna have fun. I was dressed in a polo shirt and a pair of Dockers, but the 2 quickly vetoed that. They said if I wanted to shop for a girl I needed to look like a girl, and that I needed to own it. They sorted through the clothes that Lori had donated to me, chose the Minnie Mouse t-shirt and mom jeans, and shooed me into my bedroom to change into them and panties and a bra. I retrieved the foam inserts and inserted them in the cups. When I finished dressing, I walked back out and they liked the look. They asked me to get the wig and my black heels. Darcy shook out the wig and placed it on my head and used her fingers to brush it into place. She had me sit and applied some light foundation and some lipstick. I put on my black pumps and walked into my bedroom for a look in the mirror. I looked decent. Darcy had me pose for a couple of pictures and we took a couple of selfies together. She texted them to Alexa, Lori, and Marnie, and in return got a thumbs up. When we were in the car, Darcy told me the first stop was a Sephora at the mall. She had a friend who worked there and I was scheduled for a makeover at 2. They explained the makeover would help me know what makeup I needed and the steps to do everything. They assured me their friend Kelly, who was doing the makeover, was very friendly and that I would love her. I felt a bit exposed walking into the mall with the Sunday crowds, but with the company of Darcy and Cindy no one seemed to notice anything unusual about me. I guessed strength in numbers. We walked into Sephora and were greeted at the door, and were told that Kelly would be right with us, and she was. Darcy and Cindy and Kelly said their hellos, and then introduced me as Dave. Once again, I realized then I would need to think of a more suitable name. Kelly walked me to a counter with a tall stool and had me sit. I briefly told Kelly about my day before and explained I had committed to going to work the next day dressed. She just smiled and clapped her hands and said, yes. I also added that probably wasn't the last time I was going out dressed, so I needed to learn what I needed to wear and do, and that I had never done makeup before. Kelly just smiled and said, let's get going then. Over the next hour she went through the steps, patiently explaining everything she did, and I borrowed a pen and paper and took notes. I was smiling internally that my final exam on this test was tomorrow morning, and I wanted a passing grade. First moisturizer, then a green primer to offset the reds in my complexion. She did a color match for my foundation, then showed me how to apply it using a stipple brush. Then concealer, and brushed on powder to set it all. Next I primer and eyeshadow and mascara, then two-tone powder for my brows, lighter on the inside, darker on the outside. Multicolor blush on my cheeks, and then some choices for a lipstick color. We jointly decided on a dark red, and Kelly found a lip liner to match the color. After the lipstick, she let me have a look. Not as dramatic as yesterday's makeover, but although daunting, I thought I could possibly duplicate most of the look tomorrow and then again in the future. Kelly gathered all the products, and as I was checking out, Darcy and Cindy reappeared. They both loved my look. Kelly asked if I wanted to join Sephora's beauty club, and after an initial no, I decided why not. The tally was a bit higher than I expected, but I just tapped my visa on the keypad and the bag full of makeup was mine. The next stop was the Nordstrom at the mall. While Kelly had been working on me, Darcy and Cindy had been looking for things for me, and they had a dressing room set up with clothes for me to try on. There were slacks, jeans, tops, and a couple of dresses, all with a businesswoman vibe. They explained they wanted to see what types of clothes suited me, and once they had ideas for what style worked, our next stop would be a higher-end consignment shop to actually buy things unless I found something at Nordstrom I couldn't resist. I spent about an hour trying on various combos of tops and bottoms, and learning my sizes. I would try something on, pop out of the dressing room, and get the reaction of Darcy and Cindy, and if around, the Nordstrom sales agent. If something didn't fit, one of them would chase down a different size. We whittled it down to a dark blue top with a white stretchy skirt, plus a Spanx bodysuit to keep everything in place. Then I was marched over to the lingerie area, where, somewhat to my embarrassment, I had a bra fitting. However, the specialist doing the fitting kept it all low-key, and suggested 3 bras for me to try on, and after trying them all with the foam inserts, I found a basic black bra that fit the best. Darcy and Cindy had more fun with me looking at panties, and asking which ones I liked, most of them, and ended up buying 5 pairs. Next was Macy's for shoes, or more accurately, heels. The dynamic duo checked the closeout racks for my size, and brought them to me to try on. Most of the pairs were too small, but they found a pair of black Mary Janes that were work-suitable, so I added them to my growing wardrobe along with 2 pairs of nude pantyhose. My outfit for work was now complete, and I walked out of the mall carrying my bags full of fun new stuff. I thought I was done, but the girls had one more stop, the consignment shop. They said I would love it, and they were right. Besides, they convinced me I needed to buy at least 1 dress, because I'd be going out after work tomorrow for Halloween. I ended up finding 1 red floral dress suitable for work, and a short dress, as they said, to wear clubbing with them one night. We also found a purse that suited me. The staff at the shop told me to come back anytime, and thought I looked great in the dresses. We finally finished around 6. We returned to the California Pizza Kitchen at the mall and I bought dinner to thank them. Sometime during the day being out in public dressed had suddenly felt natural, and I realized I could learn to like this. I paid for our dinner as a thank you to Darcy and Cindy, and the waitress said, "You ladies have a good night." On the way to my house we stopped at a drugstore and bought some makeup wipes and nail polish remover. They dropped me off at my house with a couple of farewell hugs, and I carried all my new toys into my house. I got a beer from my refrigerator and sat down to watch Sunday Night Football, postponing as long as I could to remove the makeup and return to the boy me. All I knew was that I was equally excited and anxious about going into work the next morning wearing my new blouse, skirt, and heels, and what reaction I would get. I usually try to arrive at the office around 8:30, but I decided it would be safer to go in early, around 7:30, so I could walk to my office without too many of my coworkers noticing. I also knew it was going to take a lot longer than my normal routine, so I set the alarm for 5:15 a.m. and hoped to leave by 7 o'clock. The 5:15 alarm rudely awakened me. I had a tough time falling asleep, worried about the reaction of my coworkers, and fully exposing the secret I had held inside for so long. I did have a slight laugh when I realized I needed all the beauty sleep I could get, and got very little. I shaved my face twice and then took a shower, shaving a few spots on my arms and legs. I had arranged all the makeup on the counter near the sink the night before, along with the notes I took. I went step by step, slowly, trying not to make mistakes. It took about an hour, but in the end I was okay with the results. Then dressing, pantyhose, squeezing into the Spanx, bra, forms, skirt, top, heels. I donned the wig, brushed it out, and took a look in the mirror, and then took a couple of pictures to later text to Darcy, Cindy, and Alexa. I hoped they would like the look, but I know I did. It was then I realized I should have eaten breakfast first, because I didn't want to mess up my makeup. I also realized I was too nervous to eat breakfast anyway. I loaded my purse again. Funny to think the words my purse with lipstick, my house keys, wallet, and a few other things. I took a deep breath, walked to my car, and headed to work. I parked in the garage under our building at work around 7:30. As I was an hour earlier than usual, I was a lot closer to the elevators up to the building, so it would be a shorter walk than usual. I sat in my car for about a minute, giving myself a pep talk that it was Halloween and this would be fun. I also realized at this point I was pot committed, as they say on all the poker TV shows, and needed to just do it. I opened the door, stepped out, rearranged my top and skirt, grabbed my purse from the passenger seat, and walked, strutted, to the elevators, enjoying the clicking of my heels echoing off the concrete walls and ceiling of the underground garage, and saying a silent prayer there were no colleagues waiting at the elevator. Arriving on my floor, I walked to our area and turned on the lights, so I knew I was first in. The unofficial rule was the first person in would make the first pot of coffee, but as I didn't drink coffee, I was spared that responsibility. I went to my office, logged in, and began my normal workday routine. Around 8 o'clock I heard other voices, so I knew others in my area were shuffling in. About 10 minutes later, Wendy, one of my force staff, stuck her head into my office, asking, "What are you doing in so?" and stopped mid-sentence, looked at the name on my office, looked at me, and finished, "Holy crap. Who are you and what have you done with my boss?" while smiling from ear to ear. I just answered, "Happy Halloween." She asked me to stand, so I did, and she complimented me on my outfit and said I looked great, and that she never would have guessed it was me. I gave her a brief summary of my weekend, and showed her a few pictures, and said she could see a couple others on my Facebook page. That opened the floodgates. The word spread quickly, and I had a subsequent stream of visitors to my office, both singles and groups. My coworkers had a combination of smiles, compliments, and questions, most often, "Who did your makeup?" and I would answer, "Me and Sephora." I wasn't used to being the center of attention, but I found I was enjoying it. A fair number of my coworkers pulled out their phones and took pictures, or selfies with me. Around 10 a.m. I received a phone call from Sylvia. I answered, and she said, "I hear rumors we have a new employee." I laughed and just said, "Same employee, just a slightly different work uniform." She said she was busy but could I come to her office at 10:30, because she wanted to meet the new employee. Sylvia's office was one floor up, so that meant walking through the office to the elevators and then to her office upstairs. I assumed at that point most everyone knew, so I just owned it. I crossed paths with a few who hadn't heard, but they were all good-natured. I knew Sylvia could have come to my office, but I'm sure she wanted to tease me a bit and make me walk through the office. I stuck my head around the door, made sure she wasn't on the phone, and then stepped into the doorway and said, "Ta-da." Sylvia just laughed and said, "Look at you. You look great. And your legs are to die for," and then asked me to turn around, and so I did. She then told me to take a seat, and so I did, trying to be as ladylike as possible. I gave her the 30,000-foot summary of my weekend, confirmed that Marnie and I were going to start dating again, and she merely said, "Good for you." She then added, when she texted me about coming in dressed, she never thought I would do it, but she was happy I had done so. I told her I was apprehensive, but I was also happy I had carried through. Besides, I just teased her, rule number 1, make the boss lady happy. She laughed. I then added about being the kid in grade school, about being envious of the boys who dressed as girls for Halloween, and it was finally my turn. I also said although I liked to dress, I wasn't interested in doing anything more than that, leaving the rest unsaid. Sylvia then turned more serious. We're a progressive workplace. We're proud of that. We want to talk the talk and walk the walk. We attract better workers that way. She then asked whether I planned to come to work dressed again. I said, no, I hadn't considered it, that this was only for Halloween. She then asked, be honest, would you like coming to work dressed again occasionally? I answered, I'd be nervous, but yes. Okay. Give me a second. She picked up the phone and called up HR. I heard her half of the conversation. Hey Judy, it's Sylvia. I've got an employee who needs a second ID badge. Can I send her down and get her photo taken for the new ID? I saw Sylvia nodding and said, I'll send her down in a few minutes. She hung up and looked at me. Like I said, we talk the talk and walk the walk. We like happy employees. They tend to stay with us longer, and that's good for us. You would be a great example demonstrating how our actions are consistent with our company policies. It's a win-win, good for us, good for you. I'd also like to add you to our diversity committee to add your perspective. Are you okay with all of this? I was stunned with what I was hearing, but just nodded yes. It's set then. Head down to HR, ask for Judy, and they can get your picture for your second ID tag. Do you have another name you want to use? Sylvia asked. No, I hadn't thought about it, I answered. Well, think of one for now, and you can always change it later, Sylvia said. And come back at noon and we'll go to lunch in the cafeteria. I've got a whole bunch of questions about your weekend I'm dying to ask. Plus, everyone needs to see how cute you look. Yes, boss lady. I stood up and headed out of her office, but before I left, I turned and said, thanks. I appreciate this. She just answered, you're welcome. See you at noon. I took the elevator down to the first floor, stunned at everything that had happened in the space of 3 days, from nobody knowing my secret to everyone knowing my secret. I was good with that. On the ride down, for the meantime, the path of least resistance for my new name was to just use my first initial. I had known a Diane, but she always went as D, so that would be my girl name. I arrived at Judy's cubicle in HR. We had known each other for at least 5 years. She looked at me and asked, what can I do for you, apparently not recognizing me. I answered that Sylvia called about a new ID. She asked for my last name. Johnson, I answered. Finally, she matched the name and my voice. Dave, is that you? I just nodded and answered, Happy Halloween. She just smiled and clapped and said I looked great, and several of her colleagues poked their heads over their cubes and then walked over to see and greet me. Another round of compliments and questions and a couple of pictures, which I once again enjoyed. Judy took a couple of official ID photos, got one that we were both happy with, and asked me what name I wanted to use, and I answered, D. She said it would be ready in about an hour. When I went to Sylvia's office at noon, she had my new ID ready and handed it to me. I took off my Dave ID and put it in my purse, and hung my new one around my neck, and went with Sylvia downstairs to our company cafeteria. There were a few surprised reactions from my coworkers at who the new employee was with Sylvia, but the smiles I was greeted with pleased me and lessened my worries. I assumed this was Sylvia's way of ripping the Band-Aid off, and she was paving the way for me if, when, I did this again. As promised, she and the other 6 at our table fired questions about my weekend, the makeover, shopping at the mall, etc. My phone with the pictures also made the rounds, and lots of compliments. I had one more hurdle. Earlier in the day I had scheduled a meeting at 2 p.m. with my 4 direct reports, because I wanted to see where they were with all of this. They were my team, and I needed to know if this was going to be an issue going forward. We met, and I went through the short version. I considered myself a crossdresser, had been interested in dressing since I was a child, had hid it for the longest time, had the opportunity to dress this weekend, and that Sylvia had encouraged me to come to work dressed. I then showed them my new ID, and summarized what Sylvia and I had discussed about coming occasionally to work dressed, but I needed to know if that would cause any issues with the 4 of them. They all shook their heads or said no. My final surprise was when Amy, the quietest and newest of my 4 direct reports, spoke up. "Dave, I tell all my friends about what a great boss I have and they are jealous. I tell them he treats us like adults, with respect, and says repeatedly how he values our work, and how he makes it enjoyable to come to work." She then paused and said, "If it makes you happy, I'm all in," and the 3 others verbally agreed. I said okay, I have my answer, and said thanks, I appreciated the kind words. I didn't get much work done that day, but it was one of my best days at work in a long time. As it was Halloween night, I went home and changed into the floral dress I had bought at the consignment store the day before. Marnie and I had arranged earlier that I would drive to their place a little after 8 and Lori and the 2 of us would meet Alexa at the Grove for a late dinner. In the meantime, I handed out candy to the trick-or-treaters who came to my door, with an eye out for boys who just might be dressed as girls. The Grove was a lot more sedate than it had been on Saturday night, but there were a few regulars, and I got another round of compliments on my look. I filled in my 3 companions with a summary of my day, and then pulled my new ID from my purse, and told them the boss lady and my staff said it was okay with them if I came in dressed in the future. They were almost speechless, but Alexa finally asked if I was planning to do that, and I could only answer, probably. Lori said, "Wow," and Marnie just added, "I guess that means more shopping." I did another set of Facebook and Instagram posts of my Halloween at the office, with a bit of verbiage and a lot of pictures. As with my Halloween post, I received an amazing number of likes and favorable comments. Epilogue: over time, I established a new monthly routine. Our office had a tradition of going to happy hour at a local bar on the last Friday of the month. I decided to make that day my monthly day to come in dressed as Dee. My coworkers began to look forward to what I would wear monthly. Even though our office dress code was business casual, which I strictly adhered to as Dave, my Dee dress code was business professional dresses, tops and skirts, or a suit. After happy hour, Marnie and I would meet for dinner. On the last Thursday of the month, after work I would drive to Alexa's salon to get my nails done for the weekend. I would show my nail tech a picture of my Friday outfit, and she would pick a suitable color to match the outfit. Saturday morning, I would return to the salon and assume my receptionist duties, while doing all of Alexa's accounting for the month and doing the lunch order pickup. Saturday nights I would generally have a girls' night out with the nurses from the hospital, as they hit the dance clubs. They invited me to come along one night, and I became a regular. They were happy to have a designated driver and avoid Ubers, and I enjoyed getting to show off my club wear. Marnie was also happy to have a night where she could chill at home. On Sundays, I would still do my long run, but afterwards I would hit the mall and stores to find my outfit for the next month and do any other errands. Somehow my grocery shopping and Costco runs were more fun in girl mode. Marnie adjusted to having Dee around once a month. She and Lori were still roommates, but Marnie and I were often overnight guests at each other's places, as were Lori and Alexa. Life was good. Plus, one other change. To accommodate my Thursday salon visit, Lori and I moved tennis to Wednesday nights, followed of course, by post-match drinks and nibbles at the Grove. The game must go on.